Hello, everyone. I've got a very exciting guest on today. It's Frank Poullas of Magnis Energy Technologies. Magnis is building electric vehicle batteries in upstate New York, and there's a lot of exciting things going on around this company right now. I speak to Frank. Here he is. Hello, Frank. Great to have you on. You are the managing director of Magnis, and I'd really like to thank you for your time today because Magnis is certainly a very exciting company. The first thing I want to ask you today is, it's on a lot of investors' minds. How's the New York plant tracking? I noticed you got some permits recently.
Yeah, thanks, Lachlan. Thanks for having me on. The project is tracking really well. As you mentioned, we've recently had our permits approved for the aquifer and the air permit. The significance of those permits were without them, one, we couldn't get into production, but secondly, even on the development side of things, we need those permits. So for those who have been following the stock or new to the story as well, we've pretty much been providing updates every 3 to 4 weeks on the New York project. We're at 33% complete regarding going towards development. So we're getting really close there, and we should start to see some major progress post those permits that were provided recently.
Awesome. Well, the plant, for those who aren't completely familiar, is in Endicott in New York. I was wondering, how did you settle on Endicott as a base of operations, and how do you see it sort of fitting into the overall battery supply chain?
So when we look at the partners who are involved and the key individuals, both from ourselves and from our partners in C4V, they're based in upper state New York, so it's sort of in their backyard. We've got there's a facility in Binghamton University where Professor Whittingham, who I'm sure the listeners are familiar with, he was awarded with the Nobel Prize for Chemistry and is the inventor of the lithium-ion battery, who sits on the Magnis board. He's based out of that university as well. So our technology partners, as in C4V. So it's that. It's in their backyard. They know the local government quite well. Our sort of, as mentioned, our R&D sort of pilot type facilities are based sort of next door or very close by as well. So that was sort of the reasoning behind it. There's with the factory that we have in Huron campus, it was perfect for what we were looking at doing. It also allows us, when we look at sort of power requirements, we've got a lot of hydro electric power in that region, with Niagara Falls being nearby. So there's quite a few sort of advantages being in upper state New York, which suits us perfectly. And hence, the reason as to why we're based out of there.
Great. All of that makes sense to me now. And I guess one of my other questions is, it's a bit more specific as well, but I think this is really important for people, is the BMLM batteries. So this is a specific battery chemistry for those who aren't familiar. And I was sort of wondering if you'd tell us the story about how this tech came about, and I guess how it has potential to reshape the battery tech landscape, given specific price pressures in the supply chain with regards to nickel and cobalt right now.
Yeah, great question. And, hopefully I'll do justice to answering it, because the inventor of the technology is Dr. Opredi, who's the president of C4V. And being in sort of many meetings with him, over time, obviously over time you pick up things, but in short, the whole thinking around the BMLM technology is all around, it's sort of like based on bones and the human bone, and sort of, how we're formed in nature. And in short, that BML technology, that biomineralized technology that Shailesh has invented, sits on top like, a bit of formwork, and it's a structure that goes over the sort of the lithium mixed metal phosphate technology. Now, if that biomineralized technology wasn't there. As far as I'm aware, the cathode would disintegrate quite quickly. So it's that biomineralized technology that allows it, that keeps it together, that gives it sort of the, from a safety point of view, gives it great safety, allows it as well to have sort of a long cycle life as well. So that it's sort of, answering that question, it's based on human bones and the structure that it has, and that's what Shailesh was able to emulate with that biomineralized technology that it has. Now, as you brought out, and I think it was a great point, especially we're talking about pricing pressures, and I think I was reading something the other day to say for one of the first times last month, cost of sales went higher than sort of previous months. And we know when you look at a lithium ion battery, roughly about 80% of the cost is raw materials. And we know what's happening with, apart from, nickel and cobalt, you look at things like lithium going up. So it's an interesting space, and being able to sort of, with our cathode technology, we're able to rely more upon sort of bulk commodities, I believe will give us a greater advantage, especially when you're also looking at safety being a major issue these days. I think there's another tick there as well, the longevity of the battery. So they're all major advantages that we have. And then secondly, you look at Tesla, for instance, and even CATL, there's a big push around LFP batteries at the moment. And we know that our technology is superior to an LFP battery at the same cost of an LFP battery. So it's something that we believe will derive a greater advantage in the marketplace for our technology. And in the past, we've always had people sort of say, well, when you look at, cell energy, you're not up there with, NCA or NMC, and that's what the autos are after. But we're looking at now this whole movement towards LFP, which we've got, superior technology from all aspects versus the LFP batteries. So, I think that BMLM technology is something that's going to be key for us and for the success of our projects going forward.
Well, I certainly agree, given the commodity price pressures that you mentioned before. Things like nickel and cobalt are just going up and up in price. So I want to zoom out a bit now and ask you about the two other prongs to your business, which is in Queensland and Tanzania. How are these tracking? And I know the main focus is the New York plant at the moment, but I guess I was hoping you'd sort of spin out the story for us about why they're so important to your business going forward.
So we'll start off with Tanzania, and it's sort of that vertical integration part where we have sort of three aspects of the business. One being the natural graphite project, the second being battery technology through our partners in C4V, and third being the cell manufacturing. We've got something quite unique with the Natural project where we're able to produce an anode grade product using natural graphite without the use of any chemical or thermal purification. So mechanical uses only to get to that 99.95% that's required. And that would mean, from one aspect, it should be the greenest project in the marketplace. And we're working on making sure, the fuel to produce or the energy, to produce our graphite is, as green as it can get. Obviously, being involved in cells on the other aspect, we would be looking at that avenue as well. So one, you've got the cleanest product should be the cheapest product because we bypass this purification step. So it is actually really important. And you're seeing with the majors out there, and when I mean by majors, I mean in the cell manufacturing industry, they're all going down the path of, buying lithium mines out or buying, nickel mines out. And, CATL is a perfect example. They've invested in many lithium projects recently. So I think that would be a huge, advantage for us to be out there and owning projects. And I think from the anode side, we derive a huge advantage with our natural graphite project. At the moment, we're closing in to some offtakes, and we're talking sort of large North American groups who are looking at buying our graphite. And that will be sort of, it's that whole chicken and egg thing where we're trying to get the sales in before raising the funds to get the project. While we're sort of, in November now, we still feel very confident that we will get one of these large offtakes by the end of this year for the Natru project. And that will assist us in getting the funding. Then when we move on to the Townsville project, we're assessing a number of options as to how we can get some kind of manufacturing happening locally with the Townsville project, whether it's initially as a cell assembly plant or later, or a battery assembly plant, and then moving on to the cell manufacturing later on. We've had a number of groups reach out to us in regards to the batteries they're producing locally, where a number of these groups produce the batteries, but the only thing they don't do is the cells. And that's something that we're trying to take advantage of, and seeing that you look at the New York project, well, it's majority Australian owned. So that's something that's quite key, especially when you look at a lot of these supplies we're speaking to supply the Australian federal government with certain products, and at the moment the majority are buying their cells off Chinese suppliers. So this is something that's sort of becoming more and more important going forward. So we are looking at different options as to how we can progress the project as quick as possible.
Well, I certainly agree with you there that Natru gives you a bit of optionality going forward. And I'd also just point out to watchers and listeners is that the sort of pressure on sort of fixing up the supply chain is very important, especially given this net zero emissions talk that we're hearing about in the media. So I think there's a lot going for Magnis. I just want to pivot finally to some sort of, you mentioned offtake agreements, but what are some of the other near-term milestones you're looking for, specifically for the New York plant? And given your sort of early success, how are you aiming to scale the business going forward?
Yeah, so probably the next key milestone would be our semi-automated production, which we also call commercial production. That is on schedule for this quarter. So there's only 8 or 9 weeks left in the year. We plan to be up and running. The first sort of 1,000 or so cells that will be produced as a batch quite soon will be used both for marketing and sort of DD purposes. And that would be probably the next key milestone. Regarding other further milestones, funding to scale up. So the aim is to grow and increase production capacity exponentially. We see that happening with a couple of methods. One of those key methods is there will be some government funding we're quietly confident on achieving. So part of the infrastructure plan that was announced by President Biden and was passed through Congress recently roughly had about 17 billion US towards cell manufacturing. And the aim was to increase cell manufacturing capacity and hence why and that program was for groups who are either in production or literally just about to produce. So we fit perfectly in there. Our guys overseas have had a number of meetings with the Department of Energy regarding that program. Now, another thing that our guys overseas are also exploring is a potential US listing for IM3 New York. So for the US entity, and they're exploring a SPAC listing there. They're also sort of exploring an IPO, but that's obviously a longer term process. So the SPAC is something that's front and center at the moment. And we hope to have some news there in the coming months. And then sort of going further to that on the production side of things, we're looking at our automated production starting sort of towards the end of March to the end of April. So when we're only a few months from there, and then that starts scaling up. If we look at it as, giving sort of the mining analogy, it's sort of that ramp up process. So there'll be that continued ramp up, but we'll be at gigawatt scale. It'll be one of the largest plants in the US. And we've spoken previously, and I think through your report, about the sales we already have in place, where over 30 parties are qualifying our products right now. And we even have some of the large EV makers or automakers globally that are qualifying our product as well. So it's an interesting time, and I think your listeners will have a flood of news from now until sort of the start of production. And obviously once that starts, there'll be obviously quite a gradual news flow coming from that as well. So it's really exciting for the company to be in this position. It's taken us about 6 years to get to where we've got to. So while people might be seeing all this news flow, there's been a lot of effort in the background to get to the point where we're at, but it's quite exciting and very exciting times for the company overall.
Well, thank you so much, Frank. That was a really detailed look at Magnis. I'm very grateful for your time today. And I certainly look forward to seeing what the company has to offer in the months and years ahead.
Thank you so much, Lachlan. Really appreciate the support.
Well, I'm very grateful that Frank gave us his time today. He definitely gave us a very detailed look at what Magnis is up to. And it's certainly exciting for investors to know that there is a fair bit of news flow in the pipeline. So definitely check out Magnis, and thank you for watching.